Good morning. I am Irene Norstedt, Director for People, Health and Society in DG Research and Innovation. I'm very glad to welcome you today to this webinar, which is part of the webinar series organized to support the future users of the Cultural Heritage Cloud. I'm also very happy that we have come to such a long way since our first webinar 1.5 years ago. In June this year, the ECHOS project started their work to establish the basic cloud platform. 2 more projects that will develop digitization tools for the Cultural Heritage Cloud started activities this month, and in a year from now, some 10 additional cloud projects will start. With the development effort on its way, I think it's time to start talking about the interconnection between the cloud and other European platforms will look like. That is why the focus of today will be on the interconnections between the Cultural Heritage Cloud, the European Open Science Cloud, the ESOC, and the Common European Data Space for Cultural Heritage. We will start with brief presentations of the 3 initiatives and then move on to a panel discussion between the interconnections between them. Last but not least, you will have the opportunity to pose questions to the speakers via Slido. With these brief words, I wish you an interesting and productive webinar, and I am now handing over the floor to today's moderator, Katja Reppel.
Good morning and welcome also from my side to this webinar about connecting the Cultural Heritage Cloud with the Common European Data Space for Cultural Heritage and the European Open Science Cloud. My name is Katja Reppel. I'm the Head of Unit for Democracy, Equality and Culture in the European Commission's Directorate General for Research and Innovation, and I have the pleasure to moderate the webinar this morning. As Irene Norstedt just said, we've now started implementing the European Collaborative Cloud for Cultural Heritage. The backbone of this is the so-called ECHOS project that will set up the platform for the cloud. The objective today is to start the dialogue on how the cloud will connect with 2 other important platforms, the Common European Data Space for Cultural Heritage and the European Open Science Cloud. Irene just mentioned the agenda. We will start with short presentations of these 3 initiatives, then have a panel discussion, and then open question and answer session. If you have any questions for the Q&A, please connect to Slido through the QR code, which I think you should be seeing very soon on the screen. If not, the code is CLOUD with capital letter 2709 for the date of today. So in Slido, it is CLOUD 2709. And please don't hesitate entering your questions already before the start of the Q&A, and also consider upvoting questions from other participants. And with that, I would like to welcome our 3 speakers for this first part of the webinar. Richard Bucksch. He is in the European Commission RTD unit for Democracy, Equality and Culture, and he is in charge of the Cultural Heritage Cloud. Fulgencio San Martin, he is from the Director General Connect and is here for the Common European Data Space for Cultural Heritage. And finally, Bertil Egger-Beck, also from DG Research and Innovation, and he will talk about the European Open Science Cloud. With that, over to you, Richard, please.
Thank you very much, Katja, and let me now see if I can share with you the few slides. So what I will do is that very briefly, during some 5 minutes, I will try to give a quick introduction to the European Collaborative Cloud for Cultural Heritage. First, I will say something about what it is, the vision, what it is trying to achieve. Second, the background, why it was decided to launch this initiative. And third, a little bit about how we're working on establishing this collaborative cloud. And finally, a few words about the key features that we are expecting about this cloud. So with this, I will move on a little bit in the slide succession here. So let's start about what it is. The European Collaborative Cloud for Cultural Heritage is a new European collaborative cloud platform which should facilitate co-creation and reuse of data, and it should open up new possibilities for research, for innovation, and it should support cooperation within the cultural and creative industries, among other things. It is the flagship initiative of the European Research and Innovation Programme, Horizon Europe, to support the cultural heritage sector to make the most of the digital transition that we are all in the middle of. The platform should be inclusive and should also involve small and rural institutions, and it has to be designed to be sustainable in the long term, allowing for continuous improvement cycles. Therefore, it should be specifically designed for cross-disciplinary collaboration within the cultural heritage sector. It should safely share, store, and protect digital cultural heritage objects under EU legislation, and it should offer powerful but at the same time easy to use tools that respond to the needs of the cultural heritage professionals and researchers. Second, let's have a look at the background, why this cloud is needed. I would say that we're starting by the digital transition, which promises an enormous amount of exciting opportunities to the cultural heritage institutions and researchers in this field. The most important opportunities are probably linked to secure online collaboration on complex shared data and in a way that is easy to use for normal people, normal users. No such digital collaborative space exists today and will probably not be built by itself by the private sector who dominates the cloud market today. So the conclusion is that there is an urgent need for a new digital collaborative space designed for the cultural heritage professionals and researchers under European legislation. In order to respond to this need, it was agreed that Horizon Europe's Cluster 2 should support the establishment of a new collaborative platform for cultural heritage. And the Directorate General for Research and Innovation, which is where I'm working, launched an expert report to explore the ground and set the parameters for such a collaborative platform, complemented by a stakeholder survey to capture the inputs from the future users of the cloud. Based on this work, a sort of three-phase support plan was established. The first call from 2023 would support the main platform project as well as a couple of digitization tool projects. The project ECOS was the one selected as the main platform project that will have a key role in implementation of the collaborative platform, as Katja mentioned. The second call, currently open in this year, will support a range of tool projects that will develop digital tools to run on the cloud platform. And the third call, foreseen for next year, will support a number of real applications on the cloud platform as a kind of end-to-end testing and improve the platform. So roughly what you can see now is an estimated overall chart of the collaborative cloud implementation. And as you can see here, each line represents one Horizon Europe collaborative project, and in total there will be around 20 projects. Much of this will be running in parallel, so this is a big and complex initiative requiring a strong coordination effort. 5 years is not a lot of time to do everything that needs to be done here, but it is also necessary to move fast, as we have concluded before, and this is an urgent need. There are and there will be many opportunities to engage and be part of this effort to establish the cloud through the different call and projects which will be launched here. Then let me conclude briefly by mentioning 6 key features of the collaborative cloud that we are aiming to construct. First, the entire initiative is very much driven by a vision of enabling a paradigm shift within the cultural heritage field. The ambition is that this platform will make a real difference in the field. Second, and importantly, this is something that should be for everyone in the sector. We're aiming for moving the cultural heritage research and professionals as a whole, not only certain parts of it. And third, across the entire effort, the user community will be very strongly involved. This platform will be truly created not only for the users, but with the users. My fourth point is that precisely to make sure that it is well adapted to its users, we put a very strong emphasis on powerful user tools on the platform. In total, almost 60 million euros will be invested in developing an initial set of such user tools, and the platform will be designed to add new tools from other consortia in the future. The fifth point, not the least important today, the platform will build on what has already been done and take advantage of synergies with other initiatives. And sixth, and last but not least, this platform will be designed to be constantly improved and updated in the future as requirements and expectations change. So on this slide is a few interesting additional information, links to the additional information that you will be able to look further into when you you receive the copy of this presentation. And with this, I thank you very much for your attention, and I hand the floor back to our moderator, Katja.
Thank you very much, Rikard, and I pass on the floor without much ado to Fulgencio, please.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Wonderful. So thank you for having me. I will be presenting the data space, what it is, what are the current strands of work, and how it may work with the ECCCH. Next slide, please. So the data space, next slide, please. The data space is an infrastructure that enables data sharing between stakeholders and citizens. This data is trusted because it's based in standards, and it's always at their owners, the museums, the archives, the libraries. Therefore, the data space is decentralized already by design. The data spaces are a flagship of the digital policy of the Union, and particularly the data space for cultural heritage was probably the first. So there was this meeting in 2005 where 6 heads of state agreed that they wanted their digitized cultural heritage to be shared and be available online or searchable and findable in a single place. That was the origin of Europeana, that was created 3 years after, and that is actually what we have today. It's very much the same, except that it has evolved a lot. So I'm jumping a bit to 2021, where we had the new recommendation based in the data space in Europeana. Because there were 3 key urgencies in digitizing. The first one was cultural heritage at risk. That came from the 2019 fire in Notre Dame, you may remember it. Cultural heritage at risk. The second was cultural heritage, which is the most visited monuments and sites. And that came from what happened 1 year after. So in 2020, the hard confinement that prevented us to visit the places that we loved. So the most visited was based on that. Also on the year after, in 2021, you remember the reopen when we were visiting all those places, all with masks, even in the open air. And it was wonderful to be able to visit them again. But then some places like, I don't know, like Venice, they were flooded with people, and then it was almost impossible to visit them properly or to see them properly. And that was one of motives in order to digitize them as well. The third category, so at risk, most visited, the third category is cultural heritage that is not yet too much digitized, such as, for example, intangible heritage. This means that the data space is already available and working, has 4,000 museums and cultural heritage institutions behind and sharing their data. They provide around 58 million objects. They also have, the data space also has the largest digital cultural heritage network of professionals in the EU. So there are more than 5,000 professionals there, and the data space is so much more. We have governance, we have a whole lot of activities for capacity building. We have a new academy. We have APIs for access and reuse. We have solid reuse grounds with a licensing framework. We have the data semantically structured. So there is a lot there. Next slide, please. So this is what we are working right now, the strands of work. We are basing it in these three. So first, we are strengthening and extending the infrastructure, and we will make access easier for younger generations. Just a month ago, the president of the Commission, Ms. von der Leyen, said that we should make cultural heritage access easier for younger generations. We are taking this, of course, as a basis of our work, and that means that the data space will become available to extended reality users, to virtual worlds and other initiatives. Second, we are cooperating even further with member states in terms of governance, for example, and in terms of digitization, we want to achieve the ambitious objectives of the recommendation. Third, we will extend the cooperation, the interoperability with other initiatives, and here I include the ECCCH, the cloud, and that is what we are here for today, so I will develop that. Next slide, please. So in some, next slide, thanks. So in some meetings that we have already had with member states, the member state representatives, so the ministries of culture, they have already told us this. They have made very clear that the data space and the cloud will need to coordinate in several areas. I will have a slide with each area. So here we have data exchange. For example, museums will not want, it takes a lot of time to ingest their data, to digitize and to send the data to the platform. They will not want to do it twice. So if they send the data to the data space, that should be available for the cloud and vice versa. So they don't want to do their job twice. Also, they certainly will not want to lose their data for any reasons, be it enrichments done by AI, be it new versions of the datasets, whatever. They will want persistent identifiers. They will want a coherent digital preservation. They will want a single login place for tools for the data, a single login place. It's very simple, but it's technically challenging. We will have to do that. Not least, they will not want to work with a specific to some data sets. So they will want interoperable vocabularies and ontologies. Next slide, please. So from the Commission point of view and from the member states point of view, we are eager to get to the new tools at the cloud and see how they can contribute to 3D, concretely to the recommendation targets. In the recommendation, member states commit to support and contribute to the data space, and we had this big event with ministers and the commissioner earlier this year in May, where we were examining this, and it was the TWINIT campaign, the summit of the TWINIT campaign, and it was really a wonderful event where we had amazing models in 3D like this one. Next slide, please. One of the most successful parts so far in Europeana and in the data space is capacity building. In the coming future, we want this training offer to be expanded in the data space. We will have a curriculum, we will have the new academy, we will focus in the audiences mentioned, so museums, education, creative industries. It will be all the domains that can reuse this data. We are searching for others, certainly. On the other side, the cloud is expected to address university, science, researchers, wonderful. But we were already asked by the member states, the training offer should be compatible and complementary to the data space. Next slide, please. This is my last. The main question we have received so far from member states is about governance, about the decisions to be taken. The governance of the data space is in place since many years ago and working successfully as a triangle of member states representatives, the Europeana Foundation, which is in charge of the consortium and also leading the other parts of the initiative, like the aggregators and the network association. And the third part of the triangle is the Commission, it's us. So that is working very well, and we are looking to continue. And we hope that the governance with the cloud will be coordinated, so we will not have incoherent or clashing decisions. Last slide. Thank you very much. That was all. Please note that all my images used here are available to be reused in the Europeana website, and I invite you to reuse cultural heritage.
Thank you very much, Fulgencio, for the interesting presentation. And I would like to pass the floor to Bertil regarding the European Open Science Cloud. Please, Bertil.
Thank you very much. So my name is Bertil Lægger-Bech, and I'm working in the unit on open science and research infrastructures in the DG RTD, where we are overseeing a European Open Science Cloud, also called EOSC, which is recognized as the common European data space for research and innovation. So it's a horizontal data space covering research across scientific disciplines. And that's also why we are in close contact with other DGs of the European Commission to ensure that other researchers within other data spaces, they can benefit from the services of EOSC. And that's also in this capacity that I will talk today about the potential connections between EOSC and the Cultural Heritage Data Space and Cultural Heritage Cloud. Yeah, please change slide. So first, a bit about what is EOSC. You can call it a process to accelerate open science, which is a key priority of the European Commission to ensure that research will be more efficient and responsive to the needs of society. And then also to ensure that data management will be fair. So the FAIR principle that data should be findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. And that's in order to stimulate cooperation between scientists across Europe. Then is a bit more specifically is an open and trusted federation of infrastructure. So EOSC is not one monolithic system. It's a federation of different research nodes providing data and providing services that will be integrated into one federation. And that is with the purpose to enable around 2 million European researchers to store, share, process, analyze, and reuse research digital objects such as publications and software. And in that way, EOSC is creating an evolving ecosystem where we are bringing together the Commission, member states, R&I stakeholders to create a single market for research data and co-create these infrastructures across European, national and regional level. Next slide, please. Next. Yeah. And just a bit about how we govern EOSC. So you can see in this figure that there are 3 parties in the governance of EOSC. So we are the European Commission, where it's mainly in our unit that we are overseeing EOSC. Then there's the member states and associated countries who are represented through the EOSC Steering Board, which is an expert group established within the Commission. And then you have EOSC Association representing the research community in Europe, providing input on the development of EOSC. And we are working on many different things, but to make it short, you can divide it into 2 different activities. There's first the EOSC pre-2027 work stream. That's about creating the EOSC Federation. So to ensure that research nodes across Europe, they will join the federation. So right now we are discussing in the tripartite governance what should be the rules for EASK Federation, what is the implementation plan, and how do we ensure that they will quickly be up and running. And we are doing that in a dedicated tripartite group within this governance framework. Then we're also discussing what should be the governance framework and operations of EASK post 2027. So it means when we will start the new multi-annual financial framework of the EU, which will start in the beginning of 2028, and also when we will have a new framework program for research and innovation, the so-called FP10. Then at the time, we need to have a more permanent structure for the governance, finance and operations of EASK. So that's also one of the key discussions for the moment between the Commission, the Member States, associated countries and the EASK Association. Next slide, please. Then a bit about what is the role of the Commission when it comes to EASK, because we are doing many things to support the development of EASK. First, we're ensuring to keep it as a policy momentum for EASK. EASK is a key pillar of the digital transition of the EU. So we have, for example, ensured that open science, including EASK, is one of the actions of the European research area for the current policy agenda of 2022 to 2024. And we're also working to ensure it will be a key part of the next policy area. And then, as I mentioned to begin with, that EASK is recognized as one of the common European data spaces. We're also funding projects on EASK because this is really a large-scale project. We estimate it will require investments, both financially and in kind resources for this budget program of around 1 billion euros. And of these, you can see here in the slide that 490 million investments are provided through Horizon Europe program. If you go to the Horizon Europe website, you'll be able to find the ongoing and also upcoming projects on EASK. If you look in the work program on the research infrastructures, there you just need to look at the so-called infra EASK projects. Then we also, as I mentioned before, we are involved in the EASK governance, and we also coordinate with the forum on the European research area, and also ESFRI covering research infrastructures and different think tanks. Next slide, please. Then a bit about the EASK EU node, which is a reference node procured by and owned by the EU Commission, which will enable the federation. So the EASK EU node is not the federation itself, but it will enable the federation. If you search for EASK EU node, you will find a static website, and you will get an overview of the services that will be offered and what would be the structure of the website. And then, as you can see on this slide, we will have a technical launch event on the EASK EU node, which will take place on 10 October. And through the link here in the slides, and I know the slides will be shared afterwards, then through the link here, you can directly access both the agenda and also where you will find the live stream link. The event will, of course, also be recorded. So if you cannot follow the event on this specific day, then you can watch it afterwards, where you give an overview of the objectives of EASK EU node and also how it will work in practice. But I will not say more about EASK EU node because my colleague Peter Szigeti from DG Connect, he will give a presentation later in the webinar where he will go much more into detail about EASK EU node and how you can benefit from it. Next slide, please. Then a bit about what are the value proposition of EASK Federation. And I could talk very long about this. So this is just a short overview of what are the benefits of joining EASK Federation. Then first, economies of scale, because we're creating a large data ecosystem. You will also benefit from the interdisciplinarities, that you will have a larger pool of data and you will be better able to work across scientific disciplines. Then in EASK Federation, we will also ensure to have trusted environment. So you can also share sensitive data, which will only be accessible by some of the users and where there will be much higher security standards. And then, of course, it's a key tool in enabling AI research, where you need access to larger pools of research data, and very important for the policy implementation of both priorities within EU's research and digital agendas. Next slide, please. So just a bit about how to join EASK Federation to make it a bit more specific, because there are two main routes to get into to the federation. First, you can enroll as an EU node. That would mean that you need to register and integrate a node into the EASK Federation, whereby you're sharing resources. And if you do so, it's quite demanding because you need a certain capacity to enroll as an EU node, and there are also many requirements that you need to fulfill. And I will go through this on the next slide. So there you see that's a bit more the resource demanding way of joining the federation. But there's also another way you can join the federation, that is to onboard your resources into an existing EASK node. Where here there are also certain quality requirements that you need to fulfill, but they're not the same requirements on capacity and the resources you need to invest in the system. Next slide, please. And then requirements for EASK nodes, just to elaborate on what I presented before. And here you can see the disclaimer, it is still up for discussion in the tripartite governance. So it's not the secret information I'm revealing here. These are the basic principles that we agree on in the tripartite governance, but there's not yet an official document, and the more details on the requirements still need to be agreed on before we can present something officially. But here at least you have the principles of what you need to fulfill when you join EASK as a node. You see legal entity as a public benefit entity, large-scale quality service provisions, and so forth need to comply with the EASK Federation rules. And one important point is sustainability. So you need to have continued operations of your services, ideally for 5 years and more. That is really important for the credibility of the system, that it will be, say, more long-term or services on a bit more permanent basis, because it's not trustworthy if services are only available for example, half a year, and then a researcher working on a project will suddenly not be able to find a certain data set anymore. So there needs to be this long-term view on the way you involve in the EASK Federation. Next slide, please. Here's my last slide, just putting some words into what is the potential for Cultural Heritage Cloud in EASK. This is still very much up for discussion. We are in the very initial phase, but here's just some considerations to take into account. Because where we are in the process is that we will have EASK EU node being presented for the technical launch event in October. Then we will have an initial phase where candidates node will be enrolled and forming a testing environment. And then in around a year from now, more nodes can be enrolled. And then for the Cultural Heritage Cloud, also Cultural Heritage Database and Europeana, there could be some considerations whether to onboard services into EASK or whether to join as a node. For example, Cultural Heritage Cloud, Cultural Heritage Database, Europeana could form a gravity for cultural heritage and perhaps in that way form a node. But that is something that needs to be discussed further. Another way that there will be a connection, that will be through the smart middleware symbol that is ensuring interconnection between databases. This is something that is currently being rolled out by DG Connect, and which will also be an important tool to ensure that there will be interconnection between EASK and then the Cultural Heritage Database, and then in collaboration with the Cultural Heritage Cloud. So I will stop here and get back to you, Katja.
Thank you so much, Bertil. Very, very interesting. And well noted that there is an event on the 10th of October then for the launch. By the way, just to repeat, the presentations that you just saw now, they will be put on the events page in the coming days. And with that, I would like to move to the panel discussion on the interconnections between the three initiatives. And I note with pleasure that there is already quite a number of questions which are accumulating in our Slido. But I would first of all like to welcome the three panelists, notably for the cloud, and maybe you can switch on your cameras as I name you, Xavier Rodier. He's the project coordinator of the ECHOS project. Good morning. For the data space, Harry Verweyen, he's General Director of the Europeana Foundation. Morning.
Good morning.
And for the EASK EU node, Peter Szegedy from DG Connect.
Good morning.
Good morning. And the sound test works, which is already very, very good. Before moving to the Slido questions, I would like to ask you a couple of things which are, I think, also resonating in some Slido questions. How do you imagine the interconnection between the collaborative cloud, the data space, and EOSC to work? Any first views on that?
Sure. Shall I
Avi,
give it a
yes.
start, Katja?
Yes.
All right, good. I'll focus a little bit on the connection between data space and cloud, which is closer to me than at the moment than the Open Science Cloud. But so first of all, I think we should all be very pleased that there is such a thing as cloud now. I think it indeed fills a gap. There wasn't a collaborative workspace for cultural heritage science, so I think it's fantastic that we now have that. So let me give you two examples where I think these two initiatives can really complement each other in real life. So as Fogan has already outlined, the data space is already well set up to harvest data. We now have 50 million plus items, still object-based to a large extent. We'll double that in the coming years, so we'll have quite a significant corpus of interesting material to work from. But on the other hand, some of that material may still be poorly suited for specific use cases in, let's say, creative industries or education, because, let's say, it lacks metadata that is appropriate for those settings. So we have, for example, large collections of photographs with very poor metadata, which is, imagine, for example, that it still has very data structured. It will tell you who the author is, it will tell you where it comes from, but it's not a human legible story. It's not natural language, let's say. So one of the things I'm quite excited about is to see if in the current calls that are out with cloud, in particular, I think call 3 calls for advanced data enrichment, so tools to develop that. Can we import these selections of, let's say, photographs of people skiing over the past 100 years, which we have, and then have tools that automatically detect patterns in that skiing, in those skiing photographs, create metadata from it, so that we can import it back again into the data space and make it available in creative settings. So those are sort of a first instance of how I see these interactions happen. But let me give you a second example, if I may. Those innovative tools may also allow us to do something more advanced than just detect metadata. So one of the use cases that we're working with is with another organization called Time Machine, which have very localized advanced ways of showing how cities evolved over the years, right? So imagine Paris or Berlin, how it evolved from the Middle Ages to now. But it is it's lacking very precise geolocation data on images so that it can really create those things. We know that AI tools can now automatically detect from a photograph from, let's say, the Eiffel Tower, not only that it is the Eiffel Tower, but also from which angle it was taken. And those are the kinds of precision data that we really need, that I'm hoping that the cloud can really supply us with. So that's sort of the loop that I'm imagining in the coming years to develop. I'm an amateur photographer, and I'm using Adobe Lightroom. I'm using this as an example. Adobe Lightroom, I think, is a nice metaphor for how data space and cloud could work together. There's one single login where I can upload my photographs, organize them. That's a data space thing. And then there are all kinds of tools that allow me to, change the contrast and do all kinds of things like that. That might be a cloud-related thing, so that I can then publish it, again, still with a single login, to places like Flickr or other big image databases for publication. So that would be my entry point, Katja, into this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. And well noted that photography is your big thing. But Xavier, Peter, would you
Yes,
have
maybe.
any
Sorry.
comments on interconnections? Please.
Thank you, Katja. Maybe I can go further with the cloud for heritage, but because as you say, we are just at the beginning of this initiative with when it calls the start in last June. So the Cultural Heritage Cloud will provide a digital ecosystem that not only gathers data and services, but goes beyond this to create an interactive virtual environment for all cultural heritage professionals. By creating a digital commons for cultural heritage, we aim to move from the mere digitization of heritage to adopt more focused narrative on holistic approach that integrate the often disparate existing knowledge of heritage object, whether tangible or intangible. This digital environment will help make existing data more readily accessible and create new collective knowledge. The Cultural Heritage Cloud will streamline the creation of services and tools that were not possible before, either due to the lack of computing or storage infrastructure, or due to the lack of synergy between communities, developers, and researchers. As the community needs driven socio-technical environment, the Cultural Heritage Cloud will rely on several or other existing infrastructure and initiatives. And with the data space for cultural heritage, will be a key partner for accessing specific kinds of data or metadata on cultural heritage. Other data space from related sectors such as tourism will follow. This key contribution, along with complementary data sources from research infrastructures, including ERICS, such as DARIA, Clarin, or IRIS, will fuel the creation, maintenance and evolution of heritage digital twins. Digital twins will capture processes, knowledge, and primary data on cultural heritage. As a provider of, on the other hand, as a provider of digital environment, digital open environment for researchers, EOSC will be a key partner to the Cultural Heritage Cloud on horizontal services for open science. We aim to use available tools, infrastructure, and standards developed with EOSC, as long as they answer the needs of the heritage community, including professionals who don't primarily engage in research activities. We want to interaction with both initiatives to be as open as possible for the benefit of all cultural heritage professionals, including cultural heritage researchers. As an initiative grounded in heritage management, valorization, and research, the Cultural Heritage Cloud community aims to create a common language and platform between all stakeholders. So that's the first answer.
Thank you, Xavier. Peter, what is your first take on this question of the interconnection?
Yes, thank you very much for having me in the first place. So EOSC is, we also have a kind of duality in our data space, if I may say, which I would like to highlight as similarities to the Cultural Heritage Cloud and also the Cultural Heritage Data Space. So in fact, we also have the data space, and we have which is called the EOSCU node, which is an infrastructure node of the entire data space. So we also realize the dynamic of a data space being a federated, a distributed environment where you have data, where you have people, and you need some kind of digital infrastructure to bind them together. And there is no such a thing where one size fits all, not even in a single discipline, not to mention a multidisciplinary research environment like EOSC. So we definitely realize the fact that we do need these gravitation centers, which we call them nodes. Other data spaces call them hubs, or maybe you call them aggregators in your space, but the concept is very similar behind it. Once you have clear ownership and responsibility for the data and decision making as close as possible to the original community where the data is coming from or originated, then you somehow have to organize the entire data space. And those are the key concepts of these nodes that brings in some control and extra responsibility to bring the similar communities, data sets, people together and make them sort of interoperable into the data space. So these are definitely the similarities. We are about, I would say, 1 year ahead of you guys, in a sense that we already procured for the first reference node of EOSC. And as Bertil mentioned, we are going to launch it on at least technically, on the 10th of October. And during later on in the month, we will gradually make it accessible for researchers to use, which will be a very tangible first milestone in EOSC. And we will use that node to build on the similar concepts and basically build out the entire data space. Now, the obvious interconnection, as I see, is that we also have this kind of national, regional, or thematic concept in our data space, where cultural heritage as a thematic can indeed fit into this. You're also talking about researchers in general, not just the cultural heritage professionals. So that's definitely the connection point. We will have all the researchers in our data space. We would like to connect to other data spaces like the cultural heritage to create some multidisciplinary research scenarios. And that's how I see the potential interaction between the two initiatives.
Thank you, Peter. But let me switch a little bit the perspective. As a user of the cloud, the data space, or EOSC, how will I benefit from such interconnections, and what interesting functionalities will be enabled through the interconnections? And I think this was also addressed in a presentation before. How will I be able to control how my digital data objects are shared with users on other platforms? Anyone wants to come in?
Do you want to start, Xavier?
If you want.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Thank you, Harry. Yes, maybe for the two first part of I'll start for the first part of your question. The benefit of for the interconnection between Cultural Heritage Cloud, EOSC, and Cultural Heritage Data Space will be at different levels, from some being visible to the users, and some not on some affecting them directly, on some indirectly. The benefit include the introduction of the single entry point, which makes the EOSC for the Cultural Heritage Cloud the primary way of accessing cultural heritage data and services. The interconnection with the data space makes available all the metadata that are or be already published there, while the interconnection with EOSC open up the data to communities of researchers that were probably not aware or unable to access them. Moreover, the introduction of the knowledge graph allow users to navigate a complex data ecosystem with increased aid on the use of advanced AI techniques, allow users to find similar or interesting data even from sources that are not native but only interconnected to the Cultural Heritage Cloud. This also means that users will not need to republish their data or metadata that are already available through the data space, EOSC, or other initiatives on the commitment of EOSC to the FAIR principle, open source, and open science principle, rely on their reachability and reuse. But the cloud, the Cultural Heritage Cloud, also provides the introduction and supports so the different projects that will appear over time of a multitude of tools and services that we cover eventually the needs of different diverse communities. This will benefit users that will be able to use their own data, but also data available on the cloud or of the data space of the other initiative on projects that will participate. So the interconnection among the different initiatives will allow those tools to be able, with this data, extending indirectly the breadth of their offering. In addition, the cloud will offer the infrastructure to allow the introduction of state-of-the-art services based on the enhanced capacity for processing and storage. Furthermore, the cloud, Cultural Heritage Cloud is not only a place to store data and metadata on new tools and services, but also a place where we can identify, store, and reuse processes, practices, and related aspects like provenance, long-term archiving, and others. Finally, we plan to provide individuals or personal space on the Cultural Heritage Cloud as part of a single entry point. This allows users to use their own data with the Cultural Heritage Cloud application while ensuring privacy and security and enforcement of IP rights if necessary. Use Cultural Heritage Cloud or external like data space data with their own tools or services as long as they follow some requirement to enable their collaboration with the Cultural Heritage Cloud. Choose with the tool services and are of interest and make them available next time they're logging with the Cultural Heritage Cloud. And any combination of the above possibility. This allows the Cultural Heritage Cloud to support small or isolated cultural heritage organizations that can join and open up their resources and benefit from the capabilities of Cultural Heritage Cloud at the entry point for wealth and interconnected services, tools and data. And we plan to reach these goals by navigation through the Cultural Heritage ecosystem with the help of different communities that will always play a crucial role into establishing requirements and validating the products by products and all the relative initiatives. And maybe, yeah.
Thanks, Javier. So a lot in for the users, I understand. From the perspective of EOSC and the data space, what would be your take on that? Yes, the benefits, functionalities, but also this controlling of digital data objects. Any views on that?
Yes, if I may say, first of all, I really appreciate the viewpoint of Javier saying that the Cultural Heritage Cloud would be a single entry point from his perspective. I presume Henry can say the same thing about Europeana, and I would say the same thing about EOSC and the EOSC UNode. So the reality is that there is no such a thing as single entry point, especially if you're thinking about the multidisciplinary research concepts, which we definitely have in EOSC. We consider all of our nodes in the federation as entry points to EOSC. What is important for a user is that it doesn't matter which entry point you are coming into, you end up in the same room, meaning that the underlying data structures, the agreement, the legal frameworks, how financial things are working across jurisdiction is somewhat solved, right? Which we often call the multinational access to this to research infrastructures. But we also have another issue which we very barely address, which is the multidisciplinary access, right? Which goes very same in line. I guess you guys know your researchers, you know your professionals in your space. You can identify them, you can control them, you can manage them. But what if you have another entry point via EOSC where you end up with a bunch of physicists or a bunch of people who are not really familiar with your data space, with your structure, with your way of working? How would you grant them access on your data, on your infrastructure? Do you really want them to mess up with the kitchen, right? So this is the fundamental issue of multidisciplinary access that we are trying to address in EOSC, meaning that the researchers should be able to work together across disciplines, and that is, I think, the primary benefit that we offer for users across the space, right? So different disciplines, different mindsets can come together. They have the underlying data sharing infrastructure and tools and services are common, so they all know what to use. They can come together and they can collaborate and create added value based on the fact that they can do their research in the domain where they really belong to. And this is where the challenge comes in, right? So how I can bring in cultural heritage data and researchers into EOSC, and other way around, how cultural heritage data space can bring in other disciplinary researchers to work together. This must be a two-way interaction. It's not the typical I'm harvesting the data from everywhere and make it findable for you. This is just the first step. The next step comes afterwards, how you can make the data interoperable, reusable, using the tools and practices around it, which I believe your Cultural Heritage Cloud will address. Just like in our case, the EOSC UNODE addresses those specific elements. So there you can actually, there is a neutral place where you can bring together multidisciplinary researchers from different countries, which have been trying to solve in the past for a long time.
Thank you very much, Peter. So let's agree there's a no wrong door principle. That was one of the things, as opposed to the one shop, only no wrong door. I hope that will be the result. But Harry, what is your take on the benefits for users?
Yeah, but maybe just to tag along in this conversation, no wrong doors. I think it's an interesting way of looking at it. I think we'll need to invest jointly in workflows and also sort of figure out the use cases. And I'm thinking again of, let's imagine a reconstruction architect, right? Just to give an example. How would such a person find its way throughout the three ecosystems, which will be overlapping to some extent, right? So perhaps it will find useful data in the data space for cultural heritage. Will be led, and I think this is the workflow that we'll need to think about. Will be led into cloud, because in cloud he will find tools that are useful. Create his digital twin around the specific object, be able to collaborate with peers on that, come up with new insights on reconstruction, and then have an output to EOSC, for example, for the research findings. And then there's a loop back to the data space. And that will, for example, benefit a librarian who has submitted the data into the data space, because enriched data comes back, and through our APIs, we'll be able to find, have better data for other purposes. So something along those lines we'll need to cater for, which will not be easy. We can think about several metaphors. I agree, single sign-on is a dream that will be very hard to accomplish, but we'll need to get pretty close to it if we really want to really make a dent in the universe, as they say. And then it comes down to, indeed, uniformity, both of interoperability of how data is being managed and shared, ensuring that we really follow the same principles, so that if you share your data with the data space, you can trust that the GDPR environment that we create for you is similar also in the other data spaces. Those are the kinds of things that I think we'll need to invest in. And ultimately, maybe that's the last bit is, we'll talk a lot about data and technical infrastructures, but it's really about, how do we as project officers, project coordinators, anyone who works in this ecosystem, create I'll be a little bit out there, body language that is similar to the people that we want to cater to. So they can trust it's a similar kind of environment that they work for.
Thanks a lot. And the body language is an interesting metaphor to use in this. Definitely. Yeah. And that brings me a bit back to a point that Peter was touching on with the multidisciplinary access. And I mean, there are different types of users who have very diverse needs as well when it comes to these interconnections. What do you foresee to take into account these diverse needs? Don't know who wants to go first.
If I may go
Yes.
first, I wanted to respond to Harry on the single sign-on dream that we are trying to actually put into practice in EOSC, as long as the authentication part is concerned. But right after that, we're hitting the other problem of the authorization. So once I identify the user and I know their attributes and I can, allow the user in, how can I decide, which resources, what tools, what data that user can have access to, right? And typically in the research environments, we have an excellence-based application process, right? Especially to large research infrastructures. So you have to wait your time in the line, and then you have to submit your applications, and the committee will look at it, and they will decide whether you have access to certain infrastructure, certain things. We're trying to innovate a little bit in that space with the EOSC EU node. We don't have an excellence-based access policy. What we're trying to implement are digital wallets, where we have digital credits in the wallet, so people will be able to spend those credits on our infrastructure as they wish. And in the whole EOSC ecosystem or data space, this concept already appeared in different national domains. We know some countries who try to experiment with these kind of wallets already, which is definitely a brand new user experience. And presumably that's what the users are these days used to when they go to public cloud, right? In the public cloud, you have some credit, either use your credit card or in many cases, if you're a researcher, you just got some for free, right? And then you go to the infrastructure where you have a plethora of tools, also open data in many cases hosted by large public cloud providers, so you can immediately get on. There is no waiting time, there's no application process. And that's definitely a new notion that we want to bring to the researchers at large, which will get us even closer to the commercial world a little bit, which presumably will help us to bridge the gap between innovation and commercialization. If you ever read the Draghi report recently, you will hear about those notions in there, which we are trying to innovate with this. So this is maybe also a question to Javier. I apologize, I'm not aware of this, but in case of the Cultural Heritage Cloud, have you ever thought about creating some kind of credits and wallets which would allow users to access certain resources? Because the portability then of those wallets and their whole ecosystem interaction would be a very, very interesting new sort of new notion that we can bring to the users at large, which I believe that's the direction that they are moving to.
Javier, I think that question went to you, and I saw you nodding.
Yes, I'm not sure to have a precise answer now, but of course the question, particularly in research, of the level of openness of the data is crucial. But for that, to answer also to your question, Katja, community and users are the forefront of ECOS. The cloud will be designed for the community, the cultural heritage community. Strategic vision, VeriWeb data is produced by different cultural heritage professionals, including researchers, but also conservators, archivists, computer scientists, ethnologists, museographers, and so on. In order to better map communities and their needs, we are currently preparing an open ECOS consultation for all involved communities. This consultation will include a survey, workshops, interviews, and participation in existing federative events in collaboration with many members that are umbrella organizations and will represent more than 1,000 institutions in Europe on a variety of disciplines across all sectors. We hope that this consultation will gather active active participation from actors involved in the data space on EOSC. Consultation result will then be used to elaborate on our implementation plan, including community representation in strategic decision making. The ECOS Consortium gathers key partners from both data space on EOSC, such as Europeana, of course, but also PSNC, EGI, or CNRS, for example. I'm sure the future European Collaborative Cloud for Cultural Heritage projects will also include partners active in several initiatives, thus creating even more informal connection and reinforcing the sense of community between institutions and users involved in the field. We will also engage with the relevant European national and regional authorities, including the Ministry of Culture, Ministry of Research and Research Infrastructure, as well as partners involved in combating illicit traffic of cultural goods or fighting climate change through the resilience of cultural heritage. This authority were also involved both other initiatives will provide high-level connection between us.
Thanks a lot. So you're having a very systematic take on how to take account the users' needs. This is reassuring. And also thanks for making the point that Europeana is actually part of your consortium, which is extremely helpful when it comes to working on interconnections, of course. Harry, please, do you have any thoughts?
Yes, no, indeed, and that's absolutely true. We're very pleased to be part also of the ECOS Consortium. I think that will help really to create the interconnections and the tissue that is needed between the two initiatives. Yeah, to come back to your question about how do we factor in user needs, I think that's a concern for all of us. Yeah, in the data space at the moment, we have several different ways of doing that. We have on our products and services, there are feedback mechanisms, as you would expect. But I think more importantly, we work with a very large community, which is organized around communities, which can initiate working groups and task forces on topics of mutual interest, and we invite them to come up with positions on certain topics. So, as you would imagine, AI is a big topic at the moment, but also decentralized data sharing. And we rely heavily on the community to come up with, that's our brain trust, if you want, on certain topics. And they can submit that to let's say, the executive body that needs to then make difficult decisions, balancing resources and so forth, in order to see how we can implement that. So I would imagine we start doing similar things in ECOS. ECOS will develop its own interesting new network, and we need to figure out together how we can make those overlaps. And then there will be surveys and all those kinds of things. One interesting thing that I've learned in the time machine context is the request for comments system, which I think is fairly common, Peter, in science, so forth. So research papers being invited to comment on. I think that's another really interesting mechanism to bring in user needs, so we can really develop something useful in the future. Maybe Peter wants to comment on that. Is that something you're using in EOSC?
Yes, definitely. I'm from the Connect side, but the RTD colleagues have, I think, the Open Research Europe service, which is about peer review process for publishing papers, sort of challenging the commercial space of Elsevier and Gartner and what have you in there, right? So what would be interesting from the EOSC point of view is that how then we can automate or semi-automate some of our decisions based on metadata information coming from those peer review systems or publishing systems. Because again, as I said, we have now problems to automating authorization decisions, whether you can have, let's say, after you finish your experiment and burn your credits, can you go for another round of funding? Can you request for other credits? How are we going to decide it, right? But if these processes are all digitalized and automated and information is available and freely shared, we can easily rely on decisions saying that, have you published any paper on this? How many people you collaborated with? How big is your impact? And we can actually see that from the data, and then we can sort of automate some of our decisions based on that information. That would again be a very, very interesting added value, not to mention AI tools and other things which can come into that aspect, but simply the fact that you have that information available in other domains, we can rely on them, trust them, bring them in, and make our decisions based on that information. That would definitely be a very interesting integration and interoperability aspects across data spaces.
I see there are very concrete interconnections emerging and growing ever stronger, even between our panelists. I do, by the way, have a watchful eye on the Slido. I don't know whether you also watch that. And there are already 33 questions which rolled in. Would you be prepared to take these Slido questions? Or you want to round up, still commenting? Nope. Then
I think that's a good point. Yeah.
And let's go to the Slido questions. And here they are displayed. So first of them, or the most upvoted of it, there seems to be lots of interest in participating in the cloud. I'm part of a consortium developing a cultural heritage monitoring solution. Could we get some contact info for the technical integration of it with the European Cultural Heritage Cloud? I think, Xavier, that's for you.
Yes, I think so. The question about is the first one, but we have already received many questions about the technical integration with the TCCH. As I said before, we are just at the beginning since last June, so it's not possible still now to give a precise requirement, but we have some idea of the main guidelines. On maybe my colleague Dimitris online with us will give some more precise information. If Dimitris, if you want to add something about this technical question.
Well, thank you, Xavier. What I can add is that the cloud is a project that just started, so we are not advanced yet to provide detailed technical guidelines for integration, but we are working on a first document on that to be released shortly. And of course, you can contact us through the website in order to get a point out and maybe exchange to the needs of the specific consortium.
Yes,
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. And so the links to the ECHOS project and so on, this is all on the webpage and of course in the PowerPoints. So, and I understand you'd be pleased to hear from other actors in the field. Let me take the second question. It comes from Isabel Pires. What is the strategy to integrate intangible cultural heritage, namely performing arts, to the Cultural Heritage Cloud, especially complex works under intellectual property protection? Intangible cultural heritage, like performing arts. Is that an option, actually?
Yeah. Yes, we try to take in. Of course, we need to take into account both tangible and intangible cultural heritage assets. So we are already trying to work in our digital for all digital heritage base, on the model will be include the needs for the tangible, both tangible and intangible heritage. The knowledge base, we try to take into account this kind of these two kinds of assets. But of course, the more precise question about the right of the object is another thing to take into account, and we try also to work on this with the different working group in ECOS project, because all things is interlinked, and it's not so easy to share in different way. And of course, we need also to bring together, not to have two things clearly separate between tangible heritage in one side and intangible in the other side, but to bring together these two notions in the same way on the idea of build and manipulate digital commons with the part of tangible and intangible of these cultural heritage assets.
Thanks.
If I may comment on this just very quickly, I had the privilege in the past to work with the network performing arts community, where the basic problem that we addressed is that how a music can be played together between remote locations, where there is this thing that good music teachers or conductors are scarce resources, so they often conduct or do some kind of teaching via the network, where of course latency becomes an issue. It's not much of a problem if you play jazz and want to jam together, but it gets more and more critical when it gets to classical music, right? So, and in the EOSC space, we do have tools which reduce latency to the minimum on the network, and also networking solutions, of course, close to the fiber, where you can actually play music together between remote sites. And in the past, we had experiments and even complete demonstrations played like that, which is an interesting element to address. And definitely from an EOSC perspective, what we can do, we can support this but with the tool, right? So we can give the necessary tooling. Then it would still be the question, presumably for the cultural data, the heritage space, how to include it, what to do with it. But from the tooling perspective, we could have solutions for that community in EOSC, which is again opens up a potential interaction on or collaboration area.
Thanks a lot. Challenging, very, very interesting. I see there's great activity on our Slido, and the question which now comes on top is, could you explain in detail the difference between the professionals targeted by the data space and by the cloud in terms of also their professions? I think that, yes, Harry, please.
Yes, and actually I would like to introduce my colleague, Valentine Charles, our Data Services Director. Hi, Valentine. You're well positioned to talk about this, at least from our perspective.
Yeah, thank you, Harry. Hi, everyone. Yeah, so in terms of professionals that are involved in working with the data space for cultural heritage, so of course there is the group of cultural heritage professionals, either professionals that are interested in submitting, sharing data with the data space. So in this case, we are talking in most of the time professionals that are close to the management of the data, data management, data documentation, data publication, and also other type of cultural heritage professionals that may work close to cultural heritage and are interested in questions regarding copyright, legal aspect of the data, and also the reuse of the data. So one of the big mission of the data space for cultural heritage is to focus on the reuse of cultural heritage. So we are also working with other type of professional in other audience groups, such as educators working with school teacher, but also education network to support them in understanding how to reuse cultural heritage in their activities and as a way to engage with their audiences. We do the same also with a researcher, especially researcher working in the sector of digital humanities most of the time. And also other type of professional that we are coming across as part of our reuse activity. So recently we worked with creative writers, for example, but also the general public, people that are interested as part of either their professional activity, but also their hobby to use cultural heritage to make creative work, such as collage, 3D installation, art piece in some ways. So yeah, in a way, it's a very diverse group of professionals we try to support, to engage with, and also to educate around the question of digital tools, usage of digital technology, but also behaviors and ethic on the web that should be followed.
Thanks a lot, Valentine. And I guess on the side of the cloud, it's more the researchers who are targeted. Is that correct?
Not only because we have to address, we aim to address the cultural heritage cloud for the whole of the community involved in the cultural heritage, different cultural heritage sector. We have identified four main, around the notion of digital heritage assets, four main sector of professional on also both a researcher on professional. One around the sector of the preservation of protection. One probably more oriented for the researcher about interpretation on understanding, but also one diagnostic and intervention for the professional intervention about the digital, the cultural heritage assets. On the fourth one, about creation, mediation, and dissemination. In each of these four sectors, we have designed described the professional involved, researchers that also other coming from other activity, and the surveys that we are launching we are working and we launch soon include all this sector, the actor of this fourth sector, and we aim to register their needs to build for all the cloud with all their needs. So some of them are very directly interested by the BOOST initiative, the digital data space on cultural heritage, and we share with the data space on Europeana a large part of the community involved in the two initiatives.
Thanks a lot, which guides me directly to the next question. Why is the cloud initiative not integrated in the data space that would facilitate synergies between the data space and the cloud? Well, in a way, Europeana is a board in the cloud, isn't it? Xavier, do you want to take the question, or?
Yes, indeed. For sure, Europeana is on board on the EOSC project, but I'm not sure that able to answer this question. Maybe it's more to you, Katia, or Ricard and Fulgencio to give the answers of this about this question.
Well, if I may react to this, I think indeed you're right, Xavier. I think it's a question that the Commission is best able to answer in terms of the technicalities of the governance that they have in mind. We know that the cloud is being funded and resourced and intellectually resourced as well through RTD, right? That's the research arm, which has a different purpose than what we're doing with the data space, which is funded and resourced under Connect, which is a deployment effort. I'm sometimes thinking of the two initiatives as, cloud being a fantastic R&D lab for R&D lab, and then the data space could be seen as, the production environment to bring things to market. I mean, that may be a poor analogy, but at least it helps a little bit to think of this. If we were one organization, one business, what would it look like? And I think, the technicalities of the governance being set aside, because that's not something we have a say in, the more we can work towards being, one organization, one type of organization suiting, like you said very well, Xavier, very overlapping audiences with different use cases, the better off we all are, and the more value we'll create for the sector, I would say. So something along those lines is what I would answer to that.
Yes, definitely. And I see that, or did I misunderstand, Dimitris? You raised the hand. If not, I will give the floor to Ricard. But please, Dimitris.
Thank you. Just to add as a quick comment that for the Cultural Heritage Cloud, we also, and Xavier mentioned that before, strive to integrate or federate other initiatives as well that are ongoing at the European level, like the initiatives coming from the different ERICs, like ERIS, DARIA, and so on. And also connection to potentially other data spaces besides the cultural data space. So I think that the important question is how seamlessly we can achieve this kind of collaboration for the end user. And we can go beyond the model of tight integration or a single monolithic application or platform that would handle everything. Thank you.
Maybe, Katia, one more thing to say is, it's not only the foundation, the European Foundation, which is part of ECHOS, but many partners who are also part of the data space, the consortium, the network, and so forth, are also part of ECHOS. I think that will really create the interactions we need.
Yeah. Yes, and in my hopes and dreams, of course, the cloud would really be a collaborative space where people collaborate, whereas Europeana is maybe a little bit less pronounced on that. But Ricard, would you like to come in? And there's also the next question, which is about the differences between Europeana and the data space. Would you like to comment?
Well, thank you, Katia. I'm not sure that I can give the full answer to this question, why the initiatives are not integrated in the same. This is something that was decided, let's say, on a different level in the European Union structure. As I mentioned at some place in our presentation, this was something that was introduced in the legal basis of Horizon Europe. That the obligation to support a collaborative platform for the cultural heritage sector, because this need had been identified. So, but our to elaborate a little bit on why this is happening. It is happening because among the European institutions, we have identified this as a strong need to address. And to address such a strong need, we need to mobilize different parts of the instrument that the European Union has to do this. We need to mobilize the research and innovation programs because there is strong needs within the research in innovation community for these needs, which overlaps also with some of the professional needs. We also need to mobilize the deployment under the Digital Europe program. So it is really the fact that we are let's say supporting this common initiative from various sources is a consequence of the high priority that the European Union gives to this. I hope it's an understandable response, and I would support Dimitri's conclusion fully. Here, the question is the real question, the important question, is to what extent do we manage to integrate this initiative for the users to make it useful and understandable and easy to use. No? Thank you.
Thanks a lot. There's a lot about the differentiation between the two, three actually initiatives that we are presenting, mainly the cloud and the data space. Unless somebody wants to come in more on explaining the differentiation. Yes, Harry.
Well, I have one more thing, not on differentiation, but on creating connections, which I'm very pleased about, is that while the Commission has not thought of these two initiatives as one initiative, which you could argue would have been an interesting way of looking at it, it does create in the calls, for example, the current calls for funding in cloud, a direct interaction. So it says explicitly that winning projects should also, if possible, use data from the data space. And if data is being created or tools that are being created in cloud, they should also be functional in the data space. So I think there's also that level of interaction that is being built into the programs right now, for which I'm very pleased about.
And of course, the initiatives are in their shaping phase, both of them. So there is a lot coming in. I see there's another question, which is a bit different from the interaction-related difference questions. It's about the digital twin concept. How will the digital twin concept be used on the platform for qualitative cultural heritage parameters integration? Now, this is very technical.
Yes, maybe first of all, we are working on to precise. There is some existing work, of course, but we are working to precise and to define more precisely with our partners. They are already work on this question on the heritage digital twins, precisely on the heritage digital twins, to define what we meant with this conception. There is no opposition, or I think there is no in this definition opposition between quantitative and qualitative cultural heritage, but more precisely for the parameter of integration, there is always, of course, not the requirements are not available. One more time, but maybe Dimitris, you can ask something about that.
Well, I can add that from its definition, from its nature, the heritage digital twins are there to provide holistic views and bring together diverse pieces of information. So like that, we already have a need for some qualitative requirements to be in place. Because otherwise we would run in danger of providing inconsistent or non-functional digital twins at the end of the day. So I think that the heritage digital twin concept will allow us to specify those parameters, those requirements in more detail, and help in that sense the advancement of the cultural heritage objects integration quite a lot.
If I may comment on the digital twins from an EOSC perspective. So the way how I see it is that we work a lot with digital twins, of course, in the research space, and those are typically very complex models to simulate or to put to the hands of the researchers. Therefore, the obvious question comes up, what about the compute resources? I'm sure thinking about the HPC, high performance computing, and the EuroHPC resources, which are at the hand of the EuroHPC GU and DigiConnect. So it's yet another open question out, who can get access to your HPC resources, under what conditions and how. But definitely we run already digital twins on your HPC. Destination Earth is a good example, where we simulate weather systems of the Earth in large scale models, and those need powerful HPC capacity. I'm not aware of this digital twins idea in the cultural heritage space, but when it gets to the point where you need significant compute capacity, GPUs and such, to accommodate large-scale digital twin models, maybe in combination with AI, then it's definitely the direction that DigiConnect has in mind, to give access to not only to academia researchers, but also SMEs in that sense, to the EuroHPC infrastructure for those type of applications.
Yes.
Please, Javier, if you want to add.
Yeah. If I can add something, there is it's very interesting this question, because there is mainly a big confusion when we use the digital twins, particularly in cultural heritage, because when we mainly the concept of digital twin is used only to describe a 3D model of a digital cultural heritage object. Or it's not the same. It's one of the part of the digital twins, but of course it's not the whole of the concept. And the other the main difference is for the cultural heritage is that we have for not for the whole, but for the main of digital cultural heritage assets, not all the information, because we use information from the past, and we show that we have the lake of information. So we are not able to have real digital twins of the originally object, but a digital twin of the object, the actually object. So it's been a gap between the model, because the model is the model of the reality, and not, actual reality, and not of the original cultural heritage object. This is the first thing. And the other thing is that we are not using, for the moment, you are not using the model to follow the evolution of the object modeling in a digital twin, but more to studying it. And the kind of simulation is not exactly in the same way in other sciences.
Thanks. Unless there are more reflections about...
Can I just react as well? Yeah.
Yes, please, Valentine. Sorry, I didn't see you in the screen.
Sorry, I was raising my real hand, which is less visible. Just to reflect on the digital twin idea, and also the first question we started with, which was the complementarity of the different initiatives. I think in the case where we are talking about culture and culture heritage in the context of Europe, we all have to contribute to this. It's our shared culture, and I think in this case, related to the building of this digital twin, I think it's important to also make sure we we are inclusive in the way we build those digital twins. So this is also to reflect to all the kind of data that different communities can bring about some cultural heritage assets. And this is also to reflect the work that the data space has been doing and is still doing by engaging with different communities, is also to address the question of inclusiveness and diversity. So making sure that we let community talk about their own cultural heritage. So we've done some work with the Jewish community, the Sami community, but also more at the moment we are working also on identifying bias in the way cultural heritage data are being described. So I think the combination of the different initiatives can be very rich in this perspective as well, making sure that the different domains are contributing data coming from various perspectives, and that will really contribute to the development of those digital twins, making sure that they are representing Europe, you know, in the big sense, and also all of the different communities that have something to say about those assets.
Thank you so much, Valentine, for useful addition. And I think of the hobby photographer whom we're having among us as well. With that, I go to the next question. The data space currently holds no high-resolution digital representations. Is it the plan to add this to the data space? Who will pay storage, staff for format emulation? I would.
Yeah. I will take this
this
question. Yeah. So indeed, the data space do not hold the digital representation, as Fulgencio has mentioned in his introduction. That's maybe the biggest example on how decentralized the data space for cultural heritage is currently. It's the materialization of this decentralization, where we collect only metadata referring to cultural heritage objects with a link to the digital object. So digital objects are always being stored at source, which means also determining the rights information that should be applicable to those digital representation is the responsibility of the organization or the aggregators supporting the organization. So of course, to do this, we have a framework. We are using rightstatement.org to make sure that everybody is following the same standard in terms of indicating the rights information for those objects. So the plan is to continue under this model to make sure that we rely on resources that are available elsewhere. And maybe also working towards defining more criteria, requirements to make sure that the storage solutions that are available at European level are of quality, and we can redirect institutions towards those solutions. The biggest gap at the moment is really when we start talking about 3D, where indeed there is a clear need in terms of storage solution for 3D models, for 3D objects. So there are different solutions available in Europe or in the construction at the moment, since we have a lot of projects working on this. So again, here the idea will be to boost those solutions and to develop some requirements so that we can start redirecting institutions towards those solutions instead of currently in the context of 3D going to solutions that are developed mostly by a US-based company. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Valentine. So high-resolution digital representations in the data space. Unless there are any other comments on that, I would move to the next question. Are there efforts to integrate national initiatives such as the National Research Data Infrastructure, NFDI, in Germany, for example? I'm not aware of 4 ontologies MD schemas, I'm afraid, but the national initiatives for such data infrastructures. Who feels Please, Javier.
Yes, thank you. From the point of view of ECOS for the Cultural Heritage Cloud, of course, we aim to take into account the national initiative in Germany, but also in other countries, because there is a lot of national initiative in different way. For here is some example on ontologies and so on, but there is also national initiative around the whole of the cultural heritage science of heritage science. For example, with a recent initiative in Italy with the H2 IOSC. But there is also an initiative in this way. They are building in Poland. In the next week, UK launch the initiative in this way also. So we are aware to probably not for all of the national initiative, but we are open to all this kind of interaction. Of course, the first task of integration in ECOS is for the project, the other project coming from the ECCCH calls, but also connecting with the need to build the governance for the future of the Cultural Heritage Cloud is combined. The interaction between what we are doing during the project with ECOS, what is existing in the national with this kind of national initiative, and how we can combine all this level at the European level, national level, but also at the regional level, because at the local level through the region, because it will be very useful in many cases. I think that even if the cultural heritage is an international level of knowledge, mainly the management of cultural heritage assets is at the local level.
Thank you very much. I wonder whether Peter had any view on the national initiatives.
Yes, I'm not a cultural heritage expert. I have to put it out there, right? So I put my question bluntly. Wouldn't it be nice if these cultural heritage values, once they digitalized in high resolution in any other ways, are somewhat stored and archived in the country where they are originated from? I'm just asking this question based on the fact that presumably there are paintings like Van Gogh paintings in New York, which are not in Amsterdam, or there are more Greek statues in the British Museum than in Athens. So, but once we talk about cultural heritage, and these are all digitalized, I mean, the digital twins or copies of these would be nice to be stored in the national data infrastructures, the storage infrastructures, and taking care of being archived as an asset or a national value. So again, I'm not an expert of this area. I'm just asking this very, very openly. I think there is a scope for having these large national, especially storage infrastructures, integrated, where you then have a national interest behind those infrastructures to keep this kind of data in their domain of scope for the benefit then once they digitalize, of course, to all the cultural heritage experts around the globe. And of course, it goes beyond Europe. Sorry to say this, but I mean, we have these issues with Africa and other countries, other regions as well, where Europe sort of gets the treasures from those areas. So would it be nice to give them then at least the storage or the data ownership back to where these things are coming from, where they digitalize? It would be an interesting aspect to take into account.
Interesting discussion.
Can I react to that, Katja? Because it's
yes,
quite fundamental, I think. So in the data space, in the data space design, as it was in the Europeana design from the start, national initiatives have been integrated into the process. Much like your nodes, Peter, we see national aggregators as being the key nodes, where, as Valentin already said, that's where the data, the content is actually residing. That has all kinds of reasons. Most importantly is that national entities want to, for good reasons, keep ownership and responsibility for the safeguarding of their national treasures. And then you're starting to to hit another interesting topic about repatriation, but maybe that's another topic. I think the design of cloud, of EOSC, of data space in that sense is very, very similar, right? We all believe in a distributed model. That's the model of sovereignty that Europe has been propagating. As much as possible, we'll keep data at source, and we'll need to design mechanisms to federate that in interesting ways so that new things can be done with it. And that raises an interesting question, I think, for cloud. What are the use cases where actual content is needed to be put in a central repository to do interesting things with it? And that should still, even if that use case exists, and I think there possibly are, be at the discretion of the owners of the data itself to be able to make it available.
Absolutely. And the use cases, this is gradually emerging as the initiative for the cloud is evolving. I'm conscious of the time, and I have two, I think, questions which are very targeted and can be answered maybe very short. Dimitris, direct question to you. Do you have an estimated date for the technical report that you mentioned?
Well, we plan to publish some first, let's say, guidelines for the connection with the ECOS project sometime in November.
In November. Thanks a lot. And then the next question at ease, at par, I think describe the technical background of the cloud. That will take us way beyond 12 o'clock. I take the liberty to take the next one, which is a bit more easy. Can you tell us more about how to apply as a tool project? So what kind of projects are you looking for? I think that is best to be answered by Ricard.
Yes, thank you, Katja. So the additional tools, projects that we have been talking about, these will be funded by Horizon Europe, and the call is already published, it's already open. The deadline to apply is in January, the 22nd of January, and the way to implement these tools is with the normal Horizon Europe collaborative project. What kinds of projects, or more exactly, what kind of tools we are looking for? This is specified in the call topics. So what you should do if you're interested here, you should look into the open calls for the collaborative cloud. There are also some resources available. There is a recorded info day presentation that gives more details about each of the topic, and also a Q&A on further to know more about this. And I would also recommend, if you are decided to try to participate in such a project, there is a platform that can help you to find suitable partners to form strong consortia for this such a project. And this goes through the normal Horizon Europe structure with national contact point in each country that can help you further and guide you towards this so-called brokerage platform. In our presentation, there is a link to this info day presentation that I mentioned, that if in case you're interested.
Yes.
I hope I answered well here. Thank you.
Thank you. And there is actually another question about the third call, which will be in the work program 2025. And indeed, that would be published then rather late in 2025 to answer that question. With that, I'm afraid I'm at almost the end, and I would like to give the chance to our panelists, Javier, Harry, and Peter, to say closing words. Was that the beginning of a great collaboration and exchange? Did you learn something? Please.
It's more at the beginning, because as we said before, with Europeana we have already a strong link through ECHOS for the moment. But I think it's very important to this first public exchange is very important to show that we are working in the same way, and we are making effort in the same way to share our effort for the benefit of the community and the stakeholders, not for our three different things. I think it's the main message.
Thank you very much. Peter, Harry.
Harry, go on.
Yeah, no, I think this was great. I don't see it as the beginning. It's a continuation of a conversation already started. But I think it's important to keep doing this. I think, like Xavier said, it's important to keep signaling to our constituents, the sector, that there is a united view on how we want to create value together. And I also really appreciated the questions. It allows us to and forces us to really think through on a deeper level how these interactions need to happen. So I would say let's continue this. I've certainly learned a lot today.
Thank you very much. Peter.
Yes, I think I was the guest here, and I very much appreciate that you guys are having me, and was able to get some insights into a very particular domain and your data space, and then your questions and the vision and that what you want to solve, which I found it fascinating, because there are a lot of similarities with other data spaces, and the fact how we try deal with multidisciplinary and multinational research communities, in fact, across these domains. So it was a very interesting learning exercise for myself, and again I appreciate that you had me.
Thank you very much. Thank you also to Dimitrios and to Valentin for having chipped in, and to Ricard, of course, having chipped in answers to the questions which we received by Slido. And yes, these three initiatives, they're really taking shape simultaneously. And so in the years ahead, I think there'll be lots more exchanges, and many of the questions on who does what and where and so on, that will sharpen up as we go and become clearer to the different types of users that we are having. And let me just note, if you read the report of Mr. Draghi, the issue of cloud was super prominent. So I think we are really on the right track, that there is something where the European Union should get going, pull together, and get a lot more into the digital world to share and to work on. So please also, everybody in the audience, thank you very much for having shared your questions with us. As usual, we can't answer them all. Very sorry about that, but you will find the contacts and more information on the cloud, on the data space, and on EOSC in our webpage, in the fact sheet that we will put together. The Horizon Europe call that was already mentioned, it is open until the 22nd of January 2025. I noted there is an event coming up on the 10th of October, which you may wish to join for the EOSC. I'm also looking forward to the consultation which Javier has mentioned to find out more on the user needs. In order to learn about that, and also an event which we are planning to organize for the cloud community in December, please don't forget, if you haven't done it yet, to register in our cloud user community. The link is also on the Cultural Heritage Cloud website that was mentioned earlier. And with that, I would like to thank you. Have a nice day, and let's stay connected. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Katja.
Bye-bye. Thank
Thank
you.
you. Bye.
Suppose we're
I suppose we leave now.
but we're not on air anymore, I'm supposing. Hi, Katja.